I still remember the night everything changed. It was one of those quiet evenings where the world felt too calm, almost like it knew a storm was coming. I sat by the window, staring at the city lights that used to make me feel alive. Back then, I believed in love, the kind that made you think pain was just proof that it was real. But I was wrong. Love shouldn't destroy you. It shouldn't leave you doubting your worth or make you forget who you are just to be enough for someone else. That's what he did to me. He wasn't just someone I loved. He was my best friend, my confidant, my everything. At least, that's what I thought. His name still echoes in my mind, though I try not to say it out loud anymore. It gives the past too much power. We built dreams together, late night talks about our future, whispered promises, plans we thought would last forever. I believed him when he said he'd never hurt me. I believed every word, every lie wrapped in affection. The betrayal didn't come all at once. It came slowly, quietly, like a poison you don't notice until it's too late. At first, he grew distant. His laughter became rare, his touch mechanical. I tried to ask him what was wrong, but he always said the same thing: I'm just tired. I wanted to believe him, so I did. But deep down, my heart knew the truth long before my mind could accept it. I found out the truth one rainy afternoon. The kind of rain that feels heavy, like the sky itself is crying for you. My phone buzzed a message from an unknown number. It wasn't words, just a picture. Him, holding another woman, smiling. The same smile he once gave me. My heart stopped. The world went silent. I remember standing there, staring at the screen as the sound of rain drowned everything else. That moment changed me. Something inside me broke, but not in the way he expected. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I didn't call him or beg for an explanation. I just stood there, cold and numb. That was the moment I realized the power of silence. He expected tears, maybe even anger, something he could use to feel important, to justify his guilt. But I gave him nothing, not even a single word. For days, I disappeared. I shut myself away from everyone. My friends called, my family worried, but I couldn't talk. The world didn't deserve to hear my pain when the person who caused it walked freely, pretending to be innocent. I wasn't planning revenge, not yet. I was learning, watching, remembering every lie, every manipulative smile, every time he made me feel like I wasn't enough. Weeks later, he showed up at my door, smiling like nothing had happened. I've missed you, he said, as if his words could erase the image of him with her. I looked at him, really looked, and for the first time, I saw him for who he truly was. A coward hiding behind charm, a man who used love as a weapon. I didn't answer. I just stepped aside, letting him talk. Every word he spoke was rehearsed, practiced, empty. That night, when he left, I made a promise to myself. I wasn't going to cry. I wasn't going to break. I was going to make him understand what real loss felt like, not through anger or chaos, but through quiet, controlled destruction. My kind of revenge wouldn't come from hate. It would come from strength. I started rebuilding my life piece by piece. I focused on my work, my health, my passion, the things he once made me neglect. I smiled again, not because I was happy, but because I refused to let him see me broken. Meanwhile, I watched him from afar. His life was still perfect, or so it seemed. But people like him always slip up. They crave attention, validation, admiration. And when they don't get it, they start to fall apart. So I let him fall. I stopped being available. I ignored his calls, his texts, his attempts to pull me back in. I knew that silence was the only language that could hurt him. Weeks turned into months, and slowly, his confidence began to crack. I heard from mutual friends that his business was failing, that the woman he chose over me had left him. Karma, I thought, doesn't always come fast, but it always arrives. Then one evening, he called again. His voice was softer this time, desperate even. "Can we talk?" he asked. I didn't answer. I simply listened to the silence between us. It said everything words couldn't. I could hear his breathing, shaky and unsure, before he finally whispered, "Please." I hung up. That was the moment I knew I had won, not against him, but against the version of me that once needed his love to feel whole. But I wasn't done. He had built his reputation on lies, playing the victim, manipulating everyone around him. I didn't need to expose him violently. All I had to do was show the truth. Quietly, strategically, I gathered everything: the messages, the screenshots, the proof of his betrayal. I didn't send them out in anger. I waited for the right moment, when his pride was highest, when his mask was shining brightest. It happened at one of his company events. I sent the truth directly to the people he valued most: his partners, his investors, his friends. The fallout was immediate. His empire crumbled within days. His name, once respected, became a warning. People whispered behind his back, the same way he once made me doubt myself. And I didn't say a word. I just watched. He called again a few days later, his voice trembling. "Why are you doing this?" he asked. I smiled, even though he couldn't see it. "I'm not doing anything," I said softly. "I'm just letting the truth speak." Silence followed. A long, heavy silence. I could almost feel him breaking on the other end. He expected rage, confrontation, maybe even tears. But I gave him nothing because nothing was louder. After that, I didn't hear from him for a while. Life started to feel lighter. I was free from the constant pull of his manipulation. I started painting again, something I hadn't done in years. Every color I laid on the canvas carried a piece of my story, my healing, my quiet power. People noticed the change in me. They said I looked different, calmer. Maybe I did, because for once, I wasn't pretending. Then, one evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, I saw his car parked near my gate. My chest tightened, but I didn't panic. I walked out slowly. He looked terrible, pale, tired, his confidence gone. The man who once stood tall was now just a shadow. He looked at me with eyes full of regret. "Please," he said softly, "I need to talk." I didn't speak. I just waited. He told me everything: how he'd lost everything, how his so-called friends abandoned him, how the world he built had fallen apart. "You destroyed me," he said, his voice breaking. I shook my head. "No," I replied. "You destroyed yourself. I just stopped protecting your lies." He fell silent, tears forming in his eyes. "I miss you," he whispered. "I can't stop thinking about you." I looked at him, the man who once made me question my worth, now begging for forgiveness he didn't deserve. "You don't miss me," I said quietly. "You miss control." His face crumpled. He fell to his knees, hands shaking. "Please, I can't live like this. I need you." For a moment, I almost pitied him. Almost. But then I remembered every night I cried alone, every time he turned my love into a weapon. I stepped back. "You'll live," I said calmly, "but you'll live knowing you lost the only person who ever truly cared for you." He looked up, his voice barely a whisper. "Is this really you?" I met his eyes. "No, this is what you made me." And then I turned and walked away, not in anger, not in sadness, but in peace. Behind me, he called my name over and over, but I didn't look back. Because I wasn't walking away from him, I was walking toward myself. Days turned into weeks, and life slowly began to feel normal again. I poured my emotions into art, into work, into growth. I opened my own studio. People came to see my paintings. They said they could feel something in them. Pain, hope, rebirth. Maybe because they were right. Every brush stroke carried my truth. One day, a young woman visited. She said my painting saved her life. I saw it online, she told me. It made me feel like someone understood. Her words touched something deep inside me. I realized that maybe this was my purpose: not revenge, not hate, but connection. Pain had once destroyed me, but now it had turned into art, into healing, into power. I finally forgave myself, not for trusting him, but for staying too long in the fire. Sometimes, late at night, I still think about him. I wonder if he ever truly understood what he lost. Maybe he did, maybe he didn't, but it doesn't matter anymore, because I'm no longer defined by what he did. He expected my tears, but what he got was silence, a silence that echoed louder than any scream, that lived longer than his lies. My revenge wasn't loud or cruel. It was simply peace. And that, I've learned, is the most powerful kind of revenge there is. I remember the quiet after the storm, that strange silence that settles in after you've finally done everything you said you would. The revenge was complete. The truth had come out. He was left standing in the ruins of his own lies, and I had walked away without looking back. For a while, I thought that would be the end of it. But endings, they're never as clean as we imagine them to be. In the days that followed, I tried to adjust to peace. My mornings were no longer filled with anxiety or that constant ache in my chest. I could finally breathe again. But peace, real peace, is hard to accept when you've lived in chaos for too long. I would wake up expecting my phone to ring with another lie, another crisis, another apology. And when it didn't, I felt lost, like I didn't know who I was without the pain. I started to spend my days walking long, Aimless walks through the park, the city, anywhere I could feel movement. Because movement meant life, and I was trying to find mine again. The air felt different now. The colors were brighter, but sometimes even beauty hurt because it reminded me how blind I had been to it before. There were moments when his voice would echo in my head, not out of longing, but memory. The things he said, the manipulations, the fake kindness. I had memorized every lie like it was scripture. Now, I was trying to unlearn it all, to teach myself that love wasn't supposed to hurt, that loyalty wasn't supposed to be one-sided, that silence didn't mean peace, sometimes it meant survival. One evening, as the sun dipped low and painted the sky with gold, I sat by the river and asked myself a question I hadn't dared to before. What now? Because revenge had filled the void where my heart used to be, but it couldn't live there forever. I had exposed him, yes. I had made him face the mirror of his own betrayal. But now I had to face mine, the parts of me that stayed too long, trusted too deeply, forgave too easily. So I began to rebuild quietly, slowly, like planting seeds after a storm. I found a new job, far away from the shadows of my past life. I reconnected with old friends I had drifted from because of him. At first, it was awkward, like learning to speak after forgetting how. But with every laugh, every small conversation, I felt parts of myself returning, parts he had taken but never truly owned. And then, one night, when I least expected it, he called. His name flashed across my phone screen like a ghost from a life I'd buried. My heart skipped, not from love, but from disbelief. I let the phone ring until it stopped. Minutes later, a message appeared. Please, just talk to me. I'm sorry. I stared at it for a long time. Not because I was tempted, but because it was the final proof that he hadn't changed, that he still believed he had power over me. I didn't reply. Instead, I blocked the number, not out of anger, but peace. For the first time, I realized true revenge wasn't what I'd done to him, it was what I'd become without him. He was trapped in guilt, in the wreckage of his lies, while I was finally free. Weeks passed. I started volunteering at a local shelter, not because I was trying to distract myself, but because helping others reminded me of something I'd forgotten. Compassion. I had built walls so high to protect myself that I almost forgot what warmth felt like. But as I listened to other people's stories, pain, betrayal, survival, I understood something deeper. We're all broken in our own ways, but broken doesn't mean finished. One day, an old woman at the shelter told me, "You have kind eyes, dear, but they look like they've seen too much." I smiled. She was right. My eyes had seen lies, love, betrayal, and justice, but they had also seen recovery. They've seen enough, I said quietly, and that's why they're finally open. It wasn't easy. Healing never is. Some nights, I still woke up from dreams of him, not the man he was, but the man I thought he could be. And that hurt most of all, grieving the illusion, not the person. But with every sunrise, that pain grew lighter. I began to fill my life with things that had nothing to do with him: books, music, laughter, silence. The kind of silence that comforts you, not suffocates you. Months later, I ran into him again by chance, or maybe by fate. I was at a cafe, sipping coffee, reading, when he walked in. For a second, time froze. He looked smaller somehow, not physically, but spiritually. The weight of guilt had aged him. When his eyes met mine, he froze too. There was no arrogance left, no charm, just regret. He walked over hesitantly. "Can we talk?" he asked, voice barely above a whisper. I put my cup down, looked him in the eye, and said softly, "There's nothing left to say." He nodded slowly. I could see the realization in his eyes that my silence now carried more power than all the words he once used to control me. That was the moment I knew I had truly won. Not by exposing him, not by making him beg, but by becoming someone his lies could never touch again. After he left, I sat there for a long time, feeling a strange sense of peace. Closure doesn't come with grand moments, it comes quietly, like a gentle exhale after years of holding your breath. I walked out of that cafe feeling lighter than ever before. The world felt new again, not because it had changed, but because I had. In the months that followed, I kept moving forward. I started a small business, something I'd always dreamed of but never had the courage to do. I surrounded myself with people who saw me for who I was, not who I used to be. And every time doubt tried to whisper, I reminded myself how far I'd come. Sometimes people ask me if I regret what I did, the revenge, the exposure, the silence. I tell them the truth. I don't. Because it wasn't about him anymore. It was about me reclaiming my story. He had expected my tears. He had expected me to fall apart, to beg, to crumble. But instead, I rebuilt myself quietly, fiercely, piece by piece. Now, when I look in the mirror, I don't see a victim or a survivor. I see a woman who walked through fire and came out brighter. My scars aren't signs of pain anymore, they're proof of my strength. And every time I think of him, it's not with hatred, but indifference. The kind that only comes when you've truly let go. He once told me, "You'll never forget me." And maybe he was right, but not in the way he meant. I'll never forget him because he was the lesson I needed to learn to never lose myself again. Revenge gave me closure, but forgiveness, not for him, but for myself, gave me peace. And now, when I see others trapped in the same cycle I once lived, I tell them this: you don't need their apology to heal. You just need to decide that your story doesn't end in pain. That's what I did. I ended the chapter, not the book. And the rest of my story is mine alone. There's something about freedom that feels unreal at first, like you've been caged for so long. Your body forgets how to breathe without walls around you. I remember waking up one morning, sunlight streaming across my bed, and realizing I wasn't waiting for anyone's message. I wasn't hoping for an apology. I wasn't replaying arguments in my head. For the first time in years, I felt completely alone, and it didn't scare me. It felt like peace. I started to rediscover the little things I'd lost along the way. I went back to painting, something I hadn't done since before him. My brushes were stiff, my strokes uneven, but the colors came alive again beneath my hands. Every stroke felt like a quiet rebellion, proof that I could create beauty from pain. I'd sit for hours by the window, painting sunsets, oceans, faces I'd never seen. Sometimes tears would fall onto the canvas, but they weren't the kind of tears he expected. These were the kind that healed. There were days I still struggled. Healing isn't a straight road. Some mornings, I'd wake up heavy, like the past was pulling me backward. But I learned to face it gently. I'd make tea, sit in silence, and remind myself, I'm not there anymore. That was the old version of me, the one who begged for love that never came, who believed words over actions, who mistook pain for passion. That woman was gone. I remember one particular evening. It was raining, soft and steady. I sat by the window, watching raindrops race down the glass. My phone buzzed. It was a new number, but the message was familiar. "I think about you every day," it said. My heart didn't skip. This time, I didn't feel anger or sadness, just nothing. I smiled, deleted it, and went back to my tea. That's when I realized I had finally healed. True healing isn't forgetting the past. It's when the past stops controlling your present. People around me started noticing the change. "You look different," they'd say, "happier." Maybe it was the way I carried myself now, lighter, freer. I laughed more. I talked about the future instead of reliving the past. I even started traveling again, something I used to love but stopped doing because he always found ways to make me feel guilty for it. On one of those trips, I met someone, kind eyes, soft voice, nothing like the chaos I once mistook for love. We talked for hours about everything and nothing. He didn't try to impress me. He just listened. And for the first time, I didn't feel like I had to earn love. It just flowed quietly, steadily, like a river that didn't need to crash to be beautiful. But I was careful. I didn't rush. I had learned the value of solitude. I had learned that love isn't supposed to fix you, it's supposed to meet you where you've already started healing. And even if this new chapter didn't last forever, it didn't matter, because I had already found the most important kind of love: self-respect. Sometimes I still think back to him, not with bitterness, but reflection. He taught me everything I never wanted to learn about betrayal, manipulation, and selfishness. But he also taught me resilience. Without his cruelty, I might never have discovered my strength. So in a strange way, I'm grateful, not for what he did, but for what I became because of it. One day, I got an email, an invitation to a reunion from our old office. My first instinct was to ignore it, but curiosity won. Part of me wanted to see him again, not out of revenge, but closure. When I arrived, the room was filled with laughter, music, familiar faces. And there he was, standing in the corner, looking older, quieter. Our eyes met, and for a brief moment, time stood still. He gave me a small nod, a silent acknowledgement. I smiled politely, then turned back to my friends. That was it. No drama, no words. Just an ending, simple, complete. After that night, I walked out into the cool air, feeling something deep inside me settle. Closure doesn't always come through confrontation. Sometimes it comes through indifference. I didn't need to tell him I forgave him. I didn't need him to know I had moved on. The peace I carried was enough. Months turned into years. My life became calm, balanced, and filled with purpose. I focused on my art, my work, my growth. There were challenges. Yes, life never stops testing us, but nothing ever shook me the way that betrayal once did. Because once you've rebuilt yourself from ashes, no storm can truly break you again. Every now and then, I receive messages from women who've heard my story. They tell me how it gave them courage to leave, to heal, to choose themselves. And every time, I feel a quiet pride. My pain had a purpose. My story had meaning. What once nearly destroyed me was now helping others find strength. That's the kind of revenge that lasts, turning pain into power. Looking back now, I realize the irony. He expected me to cry forever, to drown in my heartbreak. But I turned those tears into something he could never touch: peace, confidence, freedom. He thought he broke me, but he only broke the illusion I had of him. Sometimes I walk along the same streets where we used to fight, laugh, dream. But it feels different now, softer, lighter. The ghosts don't haunt me anymore. They've become reminders of how far I've come. I no longer see the past as a wound, but as a scar, something that tells a story, but no longer hurts. Now, every time I see someone stuck in a toxic cycle, I tell them this: pain changes you, but you get to choose what kind of person it makes you. You can stay bitter, or you can grow. You can chase revenge, or you can become your own closure. I chose both. I exposed him, yes, but I also exposed my strength. He once said, "You'll regret leaving me." I smile now when I remember those words, because leaving him wasn't the end, it was the beginning of everything I was meant to be. And if I could go back and tell my past self one thing, it would be this: don't wait for someone to apologize for breaking you. Forgive yourself for letting them. Then rise quietly, gracefully, and let your success, your peace, and your happiness be the loudest thing they'll ever hear. Because in the end, he expected my tears, but what he got instead was my silence, my strength, and a version of me he never deserved to meet. Years passed, quietly but beautifully. Time has a way of softening even the sharpest memories. The pain that once lived in every heartbeat now feels like a distant echo, something I can remember, but no longer feel. Life has moved forward, and so have I. I live in a small house by the coast now. Every morning, I wake up to the sound of waves brushing against the shore and sunlight dancing across the curtains. The air smells like salt and freedom. It's simple, peaceful, a world away from who I used to be. Sometimes, I still think about that woman, the one who cried in silence, who believed love could be fixed by holding on tighter. I don't resent her. I honor her, because she walked through fire so I could stand here today, whole and unafraid. I spend my days painting and writing now. My work isn't just about beauty. It's about truth, the kind that hurts and heals at the same time. People often ask what inspires me, and I smile. Pain, I tell them. Pain inspires me, but not the kind that destroys. The kind that transforms. One afternoon, as I was setting up my easel near the water, a young woman approached me. She looked familiar in a way that had nothing to do with her face. It was the look in her eyes. That quiet desperation, that fragile hope. She hesitated before speaking. "Are you the one who wrote that story?" she asked softly. "The one about heartbreak and revenge?" I nodded. "Yes, that was me." She exhaled shakily. "Your story, it saved me. I was in something like that too. I thought I'd never get out." For a moment, I was quiet. Then I smiled, not the kind of smile that hides pain, but the kind that understands it. "You did get out," I said, "and that's all that matters now." She wiped her eyes, nodded, and walked away. I watched her go, realizing that maybe that was my real purpose all along: not revenge, not even healing for myself, but helping others find the courage to reclaim their voices. My story wasn't just mine anymore. It belonged to every woman who had ever been silenced, manipulated, or made to believe she wasn't enough. That evening, I sat on the porch with my journal, the sky painted in shades of gold and pink. I began to write, not about him, but about me, about growth, strength, peace. And as the words flowed, I felt an overwhelming gratitude. Gratitude for the pain that shaped me, the lessons that hurt me, and the strength that rebuilt me. In one of those quiet evenings, while the waves whispered against the shore, I received an unexpected email. The sender's name made me pause. It was him. My heart didn't race. It didn't hurt. I opened it, calm as the sea before me. The message was short. I heard about your book. I just wanted to say, I'm proud of you. I'm sorry for everything. For a long moment, I just stared at the words. There was a time when I would have cried reading them. A time when I would have clung to that apology as if it could undo the past. But now, I simply smiled. Because his words no longer held power. They didn't sting or soothe, they were just words. I typed back one line. Thank you. I hope you find peace too. And then I closed the laptop, feeling lighter than I ever had before. Forgiveness, I realized, isn't about excusing someone. It's about releasing the last thread that ties you to the pain. And in that moment, I was finally completely free. The next morning, I went to the water again. The sea was calm, the sky open. I stood there, barefoot, letting the tide kiss my feet. The same world that once felt cruel now felt like home. I closed my eyes and breathed deeply, fully. And I whispered to the wind, you expected my tears. But this peace, this joy, this is my answer. Sometimes, I still meet people who ask if I ever think about what could have been if he hadn't lied. If things had been different, I always say the same thing. No, because what could have been will never compare to what I became. Love once broke me, but it also rebuilt me. Pain once silenced me, but it also gave me a voice. And betrayal, that cruel, bitter thing, became the reason I learned to trust myself again. Now, I live with quiet certainty. I don't chase closure anymore. I create it. I don't wait for apologies. I outgrow the need for them. And every sunset feels like a reminder endings can be beautiful too. When I finish my paintings, I sign them with a small phrase at the bottom, from tears to truth, because that's my journey in 5 words. And sometimes when I look out over the water and see the reflection of the setting sun, I imagine my past self, the girl who once wept in the dark, standing beside me. She looks at me, smiles, and says, we made it. Yes, we did. Because in the end, revenge was never about him. It was about me reclaiming my power. And forgiveness, that final, quiet act, was how I set myself free. He expected my tears, but what he never expected was my peace.